Mila never thought she would return to the quiet farming town where she was born. She had left many years ago with a small bag and big dreams, believing she would never look back. Life in the city kept her busy, loud, and always moving. The past stayed buried, just the way she wanted it. That changed the day a letter arrived with her name written carefully on the front. The letter came from a local lawyer. It informed Mila that her Aunt Rosa had passed away and left her the old family farm. Mila sat on her bed for a long time, holding the paper in her hands. Aunt Rosa had been a quiet woman who rarely visited the city. She preferred the land, the soil, and the steady rhythm of farm life. Mila remembered her as kind but distant, someone who spoke little and observed a lot. Mila felt unsure about what to do. She had no strong feelings about the farm. It was simply a place from her childhood, full of half-remembered days and long summers. Still, something inside her felt pulled toward it. After a week of thinking, she packed her clothes, quit her temporary job, and boarded a bus heading back to the countryside. The journey took hours. Buildings slowly gave way to open land. Roads became narrow, and fields stretched far into the distance. When the bus finally stopped near the town center, Mila stepped down and took a deep breath. The air felt different here. It was cleaner, heavier with the smell of earth and plants. She walked the short distance to the farm. The iron gate stood crooked, just like before. The house looked old but steady, resting quietly as if it had been waiting for her return. The windows reflected the sky, and the porch sagged slightly in the middle. Mila stood still, feeling a strange mix of comfort and sadness. Inside the house, everything felt calm. The furniture was old but neatly arranged. Rosa had taken care of the place until the very end. There were no signs of panic or rush. It felt like Rosa had simply stepped outside and planned to return. Mila placed her bag down and walked through each room slowly, letting memories rise and fade. In the kitchen, she found a notebook on the table. Its pages were filled with neat handwriting. Rosa had written about planting times, weather changes, and small reminders for daily tasks. Mila flipped through the pages until one line caught her attention. "Do not forget the corn crib." The words felt heavier than the rest. Mila tried to remember the corn crib. It was a wooden structure near the back of the fields. It had always been there, used to store corn after harvest. Nothing about it seemed special. Still, Rosa had written the reminder clearly, as if it mattered deeply. That afternoon, Mila walked outside and explored the land. The fields were dry but healthy. The fences needed repair, and weeds had grown tall in places. It was clear that the farm needed work, but it was not beyond saving. Mila felt a sense of purpose she had not felt in years. Neighbors noticed her return quickly. One by one, they stopped by to greet her. They spoke kindly and offered help. They shared stories about Rosa, calling her strong, private, and hardworking. When Mila asked questions about the farm, people answered openly. When she mentioned the corn crib, their voices softened, and their answers became short. "It is just an old storage place," one neighbor said, then changed the subject. That night, Mila lay awake in the quiet house. The silence felt louder than city noise. Her thoughts kept returning to the notebook and the single line Rosa had written. Why mention the corn crib at all? Why not write about the house or the land instead? The next few days passed with cleaning and small repairs. Mila swept floors, opened windows, and aired out rooms that had been closed for too long. She cooked simple meals and ate alone at the wooden table. Each evening, she looked toward the fields as the sun lowered, her eyes drawn to the far corner where the corn crib stood. On the fourth morning, Mila decided she could not ignore it anymore. She put on sturdy shoes and walked toward the fields. Dry corn stalks brushed against her arms as she moved forward. The sound of her steps felt louder with each pace. The corn crib came into view slowly. It looked darker than she remembered. The wood had aged, and the roof slanted slightly. The door hung loosely, not fully closed. Mila stopped a few steps away, feeling a strange tightness in her chest. She told herself it was only an old building. Still, Her hands felt cold as she reached for the door. The air around the corn crib felt still, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Mila pulled the door open and stepped inside, unaware that the truth hidden within would soon shock the town and change everything she thought she knew about her aunt, the farm, and her own past. Mila stepped carefully inside the corn crib. The smell of dry wood and old grain filled the air. Light entered through narrow gaps in the walls, creating thin lines across the floor. At first, everything looked ordinary. There were empty sacks, broken tools, and piles of dried corn leaves pushed into corners. She moved slowly, her eyes adjusting to the dim space. Her heart beat faster, not from fear, but from curiosity. Rosa had lived here alone for many years. Mila wondered what secrets a quiet life like that could hold. As Mila walked deeper inside, she noticed something strange. One section of the floor looked newer than the rest. The wood there was less worn, cleaner, and carefully placed. She bent down and ran her fingers across it. It felt solid but different. Mila searched around and found a loose plank near the wall. She lifted it with effort and set it aside. Underneath was a small wooden hatch with a metal ring. Her breath slowed as she stared at it. This was not part of the original structure. Someone had added it later. With both hands, Mila pulled the ring upward. The hatch opened with a soft sound, revealing a narrow set of steps leading down into darkness. Cool air rose from below, carrying a faint, earthy smell. Mila hesitated. She thought about the neighbors and their short answers. She thought about Rosa and the notebook. Finally, she took a deep breath and stepped down. The steps led to a small underground room. It was dry and surprisingly clean. A single lantern hung from a hook, ready to be lit. Mila turned it on and looked around. The room was filled with wooden crates and shelves. Each crate was carefully labeled with dates and names. Some held old letters tied with string. Others contained jars filled with seeds. There were tools, maps, and notebooks stacked neatly. Mila picked up one of the letters and began to read. The handwriting was not Rosa's. It belonged to many different people. The letters spoke about hard times, lost homes, and the need for help. Some thanked Rosa for giving them a place to stay. Others mentioned food, seeds, and advice. Mila felt a wave of emotion rise in her chest. This was not a hiding place for something dark. It was a shelter. A quiet support system hidden beneath the land. She opened one of the notebooks. Inside were records of people Rosa had helped over the years. Families passing through town. Farmers who lost crops. Workers who needed a place to rest. Rosa had given them food, seeds to start again, and sometimes a safe place to stay for a short time. Mila sat down on one of the crates, overwhelmed. All her life, she thought of Rosa as distant and silent. She never imagined this side of her aunt. Rosa had built something powerful without ever asking for praise. As Mila climbed back up to the surface, her view of the farm changed. The corn crib was no longer just an old building. It was the heart of everything Rosa had protected. Later that day, Mila visited the town market. She needed supplies and also answers. As she walked past the stalls, people greeted her with polite smiles. She noticed how some of them watched her closely. An older woman named Nora stopped her. Nora had known Rosa for decades. "You went to the corn crib," Nora said calmly. Mila nodded. "Yes." Nora smiled softly. "Then you know." "Why did no one tell me?" Mila asked. "Because Rosa did not want stories," Nora replied. She wanted results. Over the next few days, more people came forward. A farmer explained how Rosa gave him seeds after a fire ruined his crops. A young couple shared how they stayed hidden on the farm while they saved enough money to move on. A shop owner spoke about quiet deliveries of food during harsh winters. The town had protected Rosa's secret out of respect. Mila spent her nights reading the letters and notes. She learned how Rosa planned everything carefully. She learned that the farm was never just a farm. It was a place of second chances. But there was something else. In the last notebook, Mila found a section marked with her own name. The pages were newer. Rosa had written about Mila leaving the town, about watching her grow from afar, about hoping she would return one day, not out of duty, but choice. The final line stopped Mila's breath. This is not finished. Mila closed the notebook slowly. She looked out the window toward the corn crib, now glowing softly in the evening light. She understood then that the inheritance was not just land or buildings. It was a responsibility. And the next choice was hers. Mila woke early the next morning with the notebook still on her mind. The words Rosa had written felt alive, as if they were speaking directly to her. The farm was quiet, wrapped in soft morning light. Birds moved through the trees, and the fields stretched wide and patient. Mila stood at the window and looked toward the corn crib. It no longer felt distant or mysterious. It felt like a promise waiting to be answered. She made simple tea and sat at the kitchen table. Rosa's notebook lay open in front of her. Mila read the last pages again, slowly this time. Rosa had planned far ahead. She had tracked supplies, seasons, and people. She had also written about change. She believed that land survived when it was shared with care. Mila felt unsure. She had lived a life far from farming and far from quiet service. She worked short jobs, moved often, and avoided long commitments. The idea of staying on the farm felt heavy. Still, the idea of leaving felt wrong. Later that morning, Mila walked into town. She wanted to see the people behind the letters and notes. She wanted to understand the weight of what Rosa had built. At the market, Mila met Tomas, a man with tired eyes and steady hands. He recognized her at once. "You are Rosa's niece," he said. "Yes," Mila replied. Tomas nodded. "She helped my family when our land failed. Gave us seeds and showed us how to care for the soil again." Mila listened as Tomas spoke. His voice was calm, but his words carried deep gratitude. He did not speak loudly. He did not need to. Others nearby listened too. More people gathered as Mila walked through town. A woman named Lena spoke about staying on the farm one winter when work was gone. An older man named Ben shared how Rosa taught him to repair tools instead of buying new ones. Each story added another layer to the farm's meaning. By the time Mila returned home, her thoughts felt heavy but clear. The farm was not a secret anymore. It lived in the town, in shared memory and quiet respect. That afternoon, Mila went back to the corn crib. She opened the hidden hatch and went down again. She checked the supplies and notes carefully. Everything was organized but aging. Seeds needed planting. Tools needed repair. The system needed hands and time. Mila sat on a crate and closed her eyes. She thought about her city life. The noise, the rush, the feeling of always chasing something. Then she thought about the farm. The steady days, the long work, the clear purpose. When she stood up, her decision was not fully formed, but it was moving in one direction. The next day, Mila called a town meeting. People gathered near the old barn, curious and quiet. Mila stood in front of them, nervous but honest. "I found what Rosa left behind," Mila said. "I know what this place has meant to many of you." The crowd listened closely. "I do not know everything about farming," Mila continued. "But I know this land can still help people. I want to keep that part alive." A soft murmur spread through the group. Faces showed relief, hope, and surprise. "I cannot do it alone," Mila said. "If this continues, it must be shared. Open. Honest." Nora stepped forward. "That is how Rosa worked," she said. Over the next weeks, change began slowly. Mila stayed on the farm. She learned from neighbors how to care for the land. Tomas helped repair fences. Lena organized supplies. Ben fixed tools in the barn. The farm became busy again, not with noise, but with purpose. Mila spent her days working the soil and her evenings reading Rosa's notes. She added her own observations in a new notebook. She wrote about weather, people, and small successes. The corn crib remained the heart of it all, but it was no longer hidden. One evening, Mila found another envelope in the underground room. It was sealed and marked with today's date. She was sure it had not been there before. Her hands shook slightly as she opened it. Inside was a single letter written in Rosa's careful style. The ink looked faded, but the words were clear. If you are reading this, you chose to stay. Mila felt her eyes grow warm. Rosa had written about trust. About letting the future shape itself through the hands of those who cared. She wrote that Mila did not need to be perfect. She only needed to be present. Mila folded the letter and held it close. She looked around the small room, then climbed back up to the surface. The sky was turning gold as the sun lowered. For the first time in many years, Mila felt steady. She did not know what the future held. She only knew that she was exactly where she needed to be. And the farm, once silent and forgotten, was breathing again. The farm changed with every passing day. Mila noticed it in small ways first. The soil looked darker after careful work. The fences stood straight again. The barn doors no longer creaked in complaint, but opened with purpose. People came and went, not as visitors, but as helpers who felt connected to the land. Mila worked from morning until evening. Her hands grew rough, and her body felt tired in a way she had never known before. It was not the tiredness of city life, where hours vanished without meaning. This tiredness felt earned. Each day ended with visible progress. Still, the responsibility weighed on her. Rosa had done this quietly for years. Mila was doing it in the open, and that brought challenges Rosa never faced. One afternoon, a man named Paul arrived at the farm. He wore clean clothes and carried a folder under his arm. He introduced himself as a representative from a development group. "This land is valuable," Paul said as he looked across the fields. "We are offering a fair price." Mila listened carefully. Paul explained plans for storage buildings and paved roads. He spoke of growth and opportunity. Some neighbors who stood nearby shifted uncomfortably. "I am not selling," Mila said calmly. Paul smiled politely. "Think carefully. Maintaining a farm like this takes money and time." Mila did think about it. That night, she sat alone at the kitchen table. Bills waited beside Rosa's notebooks. Supplies were running low. The work ahead felt endless. The next morning brought rain. Heavy clouds covered the sky, and water poured onto the fields. Mila worried about the seeds they had just planted. She walked through the mud, checking drains and barriers. Tomas and Ben joined her without being asked. They worked side by side until the rain eased. A week later, a problem appeared in the underground room. Moisture had started to creep along one wall. Some crates were at risk. Mila felt panic rise. This space was the heart of everything. She gathered the town helpers again. Ideas were shared. Plans were made. Over several days, they reinforced the walls and improved airflow. The work was slow, but the room was saved. During this time, Mila noticed something else. People from nearby towns had started to hear about the farm. A few arrived asking for help. Some needed seeds. Others needed advice. Mila felt torn. How much could the farm give without breaking itself? One evening, Mila found herself back in Rosa's old room. She opened a drawer she had avoided until now. Inside was a stack of letters Rosa had never sent. They were addressed to different people, including Mila. Mila read one carefully. Rosa wrote about balance. She wrote that helping others did not mean giving everything away. It meant teaching others how to stand on their own. The words helped Mila see clearly. The next day, Mila changed how the farm worked. Instead of only giving supplies, they began teaching. People learned how to plant properly. They learned how to store food and repair tools. The farm became a place of learning, not just support. Paul returned once more. This time, Mila met him at the gate. "I have made my choice," Mila said firmly. Paul nodded and left without argument. As summer moved forward, the crops grew strong. The corn stood tall, full and healthy. The corn crib filled again, this time with open knowledge instead of secrets. One evening, the town gathered for a shared meal near the barn. Food was simple but warm. Laughter mixed with the sound of the wind. Mila looked around and saw something she had not expected. She saw trust. Later that night, Mila walked alone to the corn crib. She placed her hand on the wooden door and closed her eyes. She thought of Rosa. She thought of the tests she had faced and the ones yet to come. The farm had been tested by time. Now it was testing Mila. And she was still standing. Autumn arrived gently on the farm. The air turned cool, and the field shifted from deep green to warm gold. Mila walked through the corn rows each morning, her steps slow and thoughtful. The land felt alive beneath her feet. It was no longer just inherited property. It was a shared effort shaped by many hands. Harvest season brought long days. People from the town arrived early and stayed late. They worked together, moving in steady rhythm. Baskets filled with corn, laughter traveled across the fields, and quiet conversations grew into friendships. Mila watched it all with a calm heart. This was what Rosa had protected. When the corn crib filled again, Mila felt a deep sense of completion. The wooden walls held more than crops. They held stories, skills, and trust passed from one person to another. The underground room was now brighter, cleaner, and better protected. New notebooks rested on the shelves, filled with fresh names and plans. One afternoon, Mila found a young boy standing near the gate. His name was Leo. He lived with his mother on the edge of town. Their land had been damaged by heavy storms. "I heard you help people learn," Leo said quietly. Mila smiled and invited him inside. She showed him the fields and explained how soil could heal when treated with care. Leo listened closely, his eyes full of hope. Over the next weeks, Mila and others helped his family rebuild their small plot. They did not give everything. They taught, guided, and worked alongside them. News of the farm spread beyond nearby towns. People spoke of it as a place of fairness and patience. Some arrived with doubts. Others arrived with gratitude. Mila met each person with honesty. She knew now that the farm could not save everyone, but it could change many paths. One evening, Nora handed Mila a small box. Inside was an old key. "Rosa wanted you to have this when the time felt right," Nora said. Mila recognized it at once. It was the original key to the corn crib. Rosa had kept it even after building the hidden hatch. Mila held the key carefully. It felt warm in her hand. That night, Mila placed the key in the underground room beside Rosa's final letter. She added a new note of her own. "This place is open to those who are willing to learn and share." As winter approached, the farm prepared. Food was stored. Tools were cleaned. Plans were made. When the first frost touched the fields, the farm rested, strong and ready. Mila spent quiet evenings by the window, watching snow fall gently onto the land. She thought about the woman she had been before returning. Restless, uncertain, afraid of staying in one place. She had changed. The town changed too. People supported each other more openly now. They shared knowledge instead of keeping it hidden. The farm had become a symbol, not of wealth, but of care. On the first day of the new year, the town gathered once more. Mila stood near the barn as children played nearby. She looked at the faces around her and felt a deep sense of peace. Rosa's legacy was not the farm itself. It was the idea that quiet kindness could shape the future. As the sun rose over the fields, Mila smiled. The corn crib stood strong against the morning light. The secret was no longer hidden. It had become a legacy.